Hello, welcome to Nakti by Kali J.N.S. And today we are continuing with the Black American series. And this is part 2, which is the transatlantic slave trade from 1451 through the 1800s. So we're covering that history for part 2 before we go on to the Reconstruction and the Civil War. So let's start. The transatlantic slave trade was the largest deportation of human beings in history. It connected the economies of Africa, the Americas, Europe, and this trade obviously resulted in the forced migration of 12.5 million Africans to the Americas. Now that's not just North America, obviously, it's South America as well. So for nearly 4 centuries, European slave traders traveled to Africa to capture and buy African slaves in exchange for textiles, arms, mirrors, and other goods. Once obtained, the enslaved Africans were then transported by ships to the Americas, where they would provide the intensive plantation labor needed to create high value commodities that would be traded on the world economy, such as tobacco, coffee, and obviously sugar and cotton. The commodities were then shipped to Europe to be sold. The profits from the slave trade helped develop the economies of Denmark, France, Great Britain, the Netherlands, Portugal, Spain, and the United States. That is the labor of the Black American. The journey from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean, known as the Middle Passage, it became infamous for its brutality. Enslaved Africans were chained to one another and transported across the ocean in cargo holds of wooden ships. The shackled prisoners sat for weeks at a time, surrounded by illness and human waste, and nearly 15% of transported slaves are estimated to have died in transit, or it just jumped off the damn boat if they got a chance. Upon landing in America, these slaves were either taken directly to plantations or to the auction house, where they would be inspected, they would be stripped nude, and then sold to the highest bidder. In 1619, the first documented Africans arrived at Jamestown, Virginia, but they were there before then part of British North America. Initially, these slaves worked at tobacco plantations along European indentured servants. So now we're going to cover domestic slavery, 1619 through 1865. This is when it was more documented, but slaves were being transported since 1429. Slave labor offered effective means for wealth creation and economic development, which is obvious, and this is particularly in the United States southern region. So warm climate and spacious lands facilitated the growth of agriculture. On plantation, field slaves typically worked for 14 to 18 hours a day, 6.5 days a week. They were under the supervision of overseers who punished those who deemed to be slowing down production, who tried to run away, who tried to start rebellions. Women were not only used for their physical labor, but were also frequently subjected to sexual force by slave owners and often white men, which often produced enslaved children. These slaves, who had the lighter complexions, often as a result of such rape, were deemed more desirable for house duties, so they became known as the house Negro or nigga, serving the master's family, such as the cooks, the servants, butlers, and maids. At night, both the field and the house slaves were kept in these small cabins with dirt floors and handmade furniture, and were often fed leftovers or the scraps. These handmade furnitures were made by the slaves. They were very handy because they were forced to build a lot of those plantation homes, a lot of that furniture. So the slaves knew how to build a bed frame, which is actually patented by a Black American. They were able to build like drawers, which is again another Black American invention. So a lot of the things that the Black American invented were a result of such conditions of where they had to figure out how to build their own furniture. They were not giving furniture. They were not giving beds and pads. So they had to make those things on their own and figure it out using the land by cutting the woods and reconfiguring the wood. Slavery also shaped the economy of the North, which financed, shipped, and insured slave-produced goods through New York and other ports. So again, this is domestic slavery, 1619 through 1865. So when you see this Exhibit 1A, which is principal destinations of slaves brought from Africa, and you see the years, 1451 through 1870. As you can see, look at Brazil and look at Haiti. A lot of people don't know this, but 80% of Brazil's population were African slaves, mostly from the Yoruba tribe. Those people did participate in a program where they can lighten up the race. That is why the Brazilians look like that now. But they were always dark skinned. They were always, you can always tell that they were African. And many of them are dark now. But many of them have decided to lay with the Portuguese men. They had this program where they literally planned to lighten up that group of people over there. Because 80% of them, I mean, they're really dark people. That's like Haiti. You know, they don't like to talk about that, those people over there, but it's very easy to see that most of Africans went to Brazil. And of course you have Haiti and Jamaica. And Haiti and Jamaica is also of very, very dark-skinned people. These are still Africans. They're 92 to 95% African still. They have very little admixture blood because they had a different system where the hierarchy, the overseers themselves were black or often biracial, and the colonizer did not live on the land with them. They didn't live on the land with Jamaica and Haiti, so they ruled it from afar, so those people were still able to keep their genetics. So then now you have Cuba. A lot of people don't know that Cuba was also extremely dark, just like how Brazil was. So now you have Guyana, Martinique, Barbados, Guadalupe, Colombia, Mexico, Venezuela, Peru, Puerto Rico, and Grenada. So you can see that all these places had slaves. But believe it or not, a lot of these places, there were already black people there too. They don't tell you that. A lot of these people, and this is a theory, but I even suspect that they went on those lands and enslaved those black people that were on there and probably told them that they were from, you know, how do you know, you know? I do think that is possible because again, just through various research and just studying things metaphysically, I even with Haiti and say like Jamaica, Barbados, you see this stuff. I really think that there were black people over there that got enslaved, and I think that they might have sent some niggas over there. I think they sent Africans over there. Okay, I'll buy that. But I think that there were people already damn over there, and they just got enslaved and told them that they weren't from there. I think they originally did inhabit that land. So this is part 2 of the Black American series. And this one is not long because it's just covering a brief history of 1451 to the 1870. So now you know that the domestic slave trade and the transatlantic slave trade, 12.5 million people potentially that were brought over to the Americas, including South America and the Caribbean. So that is where the start of the Black American identity starts to emerge, because they were mixed with the Melungeons and the natives that were already over here, and they were forced upon to mix. So that is how the Negro moniker came about during this time. So part 3, we'll be discussing the Revolutionary War and Black Americans' role in that. And we'll be discussing the Civil War and talking about Black Americans' role in that as well. So stay tuned for part 3. And I'm going to talk to y'all later. Bye.